the book, The Untold Story Revised Edition, and this is written by Edgar Shaw. We're going to start with the first subtitle here, and it's entitled The Expulsion of the Jews from Spain and Portugal. You can kind of read through the paragraph here. In the year AD 1492, January the 2nd, the Moorish stronghold of Granada surrendered to the armies of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. For the first time since the year 711, all of Spain was in Christian hands. The decree to expel the Jews from Spain was signed on March 31st in one of the corridors of the great Alhambra, the palace of the Moorish kings of Granada. So this was signed in one of the great palaces that these Moorish kings who previously had ruled in that land had built. It says the motive given for the expulsion of the Jews was that it was conceived that they corrupted the Marranos, which were basically the Jews that converted to Christianity during the time of the Inquisition. This was done by privately encouraging them in disloyalty to Christianity. The ultimatum given to the Jews elapsed or expired August 1st, 1492. Professor Alan H. Godbey says that the last Jewish king was overruled in Ghana, terminated in 1492. So basically the rulership of the Jews was terminated 1492 in Ghana. It says, in order to satisfy Queen Isabella of Spain, King Manuel of Portugal declared a royal ordinance expelling the Jews and Moors from his country. This was nothing new for the Jews. If you read back into the scriptures, you'll read that there was a point in time in which Claudius Caesar had expelled the Jews from Italy. So this was done over and over in times in the past. Okay, it says the Jews who were expelled from Spain and Portugal were scattered. Of course, we read in Deuteronomy 28 and 64 that this was a prophecy that they would be scattered throughout. So they were scattered throughout the Mediterranean coast. It is estimated that over 100,000 Jews departed from Spain and Portugal during the persecutions and expulsions. Some of these Jews went to northern and western Africa. These black Jews, so now he's telling you who they were. He's telling you that they're black Jews. This is the color, this is a description of what they look like. These black Jews would innocently go to African countries, most of all because of the less persecution, and they could semblance themselves easily among blacks. So they can basically camouflage themselves amongst the other blacks in the African lands. R.H.M. Elves gives a vivid description of the Portuguese Jew. Baruch Spinoza, middle-sized, good features, skin somewhat black, black curly hair, long eyebrows of the same color. So that one might know by his looks that he was a descendant from the Portuguese Jews. When the Jews were expelled from Spain, about 100,000 entered Portugal. So 100,000 of these Jews from Spain entered into Portugal by the admission of King John II. It says they were allowed to enter under the condition that they pay the poll tax, with that sense that they would leave the country within 8 months. So they had to pay a poll tax to get in, of course, understanding that in 8 months they would be again expelled from that land as well. Also at this time the king beholden himself to take the Jews wherever they desired at the completion of 8 months. So the king promised that after 8 months, I'll take you wherever you want. I'll set up ships so the ships can take you wherever you want to go. When the time elapsed, many Jews were stranded because the king did not provide enough ships in time. So the king didn't provide the ships during the allotted time of 8 months. May have came 8 months, 3 months, 8 months, 3 weeks, maybe 9 months, but they didn't come in time. As a result, all the black Jews who were left behind were deprived of their freedom and sold into slavery, thus fitting the prophecy that you would be sold into slavery by way of ships. During the reign of King John II, or actually Jal II or John II, 700 black Hebrew children were ruthlessly taken away from their parents in Portugal. So this was an abrupt takeover. They were just taking kids from their parents in Portugal and transporting to the island of Saint Torme off the west coast of Africa. This island is situated, its location is near Nigeria, Cameroon, and Gabon. Alan H. Godbey says that the Portuguese founded the island of Saint Tomé in 1471. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to establish themselves on the west African coast. They came first as merchants, and secondly as conquerors and slavers. With the influx of 10,000 of black Jews from Spain and Portugal seeking refuge in African ports, Morocco received a great share. In Morocco, there was a revival of Moorish and Jewish science in all areas. So you can see that these black Jews were bringing in the sciences, whether it be alchemy, periodic tables, things of that nature, physics, and all these types of sciences, the knowledge of the astronomies, things like that, the cosmos. All these things are being brought in by the Moorish and the Jewish inhabitants that were coming into those lands of Morocco. Okay, it says the Hebrew Academy in Fez, which is in Morocco, competed with the one in Caroun, in Algeria. There was many debates and lectures between the sages and the scholars of these schools. Eldad, the Danite, a Hebrew from the Jewish kingdom of Ghana, visited these schools in the 9th century. So many scholars were visiting these schools, and they were able to hear these debates by these learned men, whether sages or scholars of these schools. Okay, we're going to stop right there. Okay, we're going to pick up where we left off. Still in the book, The Untold Story, Revised Edition by Edgar Shaw. And we're picking it up from the paragraph. Says that black Jews went to Portuguese colonial possessions in Western Africa, which were Guinea, Saint Tomé Island, Senegal, Angola, and a few islands near the African coast. Throughout the persecutions in Portugal, thousands of Jews left the country. The Jews were leaving the country in such massive numbers that in 1499 and in 1531, the kings published a law forbidding the new Christians, which were the black Jews, from leaving Portugal without special permits. Cecil Roth wrote that Christian Jews immigrating to the Portuguese colony of Angola in West Africa were agents of the Inquisition and were sent to ferret them out in 1612. So this basically means that there were the Christian Jews that had converted to the Caucasian way of Christianity were sent as agents of the Inquisition to basically bring back those black Jews in those lands of Angola and those southern African lands. It says, it is certain that many black Jews of Portugal, Saint Tomé, and Angola, who became victims of the Inquisition and Portuguese persecutions, were sold into the slave trade. This Atlantic slave trade lasted more than 400 years, from 1444 to about 1880, in various parts of South America. Some scholars have located black Jews within the whole Niger River Bend. The countries in this territory have contained black African Jews, including the following: Upper Volta, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Togo, Dahomey, and Nigeria. So in recap, you had from the text is telling us that you had those Jews that had sold out to the Caucasian way of Christianity were acting as agents for the crown, which was Ferdinand and Isabella, and taking the true Jews, the ones that were solid to the faith, capturing these Jews, and thus having them deported, captured, and sent into slavery via the transatlantic slave trade. So basically, this is what was going on. Many times we hear that we sold our own people into slavery. I guess according to the text, that's technically true. You did have a great number of Jews that were sellouts, that chose to take upon them the customs of the heathen rather than stay true to the faith. And this has always been the case when you read the history of our people, of the Israelites in the past, whether it be the Roman Empire or the Greek Empire. There was always a faction of Jews that had wanted to join themselves into the heathen, so to speak. And this was the same situation during these times as well, during the Middle Ages, 1400 all the way up until the 1800s as well. So it looks like you had a great deal of sellouts that had joined the Inquisition against their own people, going into the lands of the the Niger River Bend area, Mali, Angola, places like that, and ferreting out those true Jews who were true to the faith, and consequently having these families sold into slavery.